Yeah, Stella, baby. Finna get right. Here we go. Yeah, listen. I ain't really tryna hold too much pride. Feeling like Michael, how I beat those odds. Yeah.
Welcome to Unapologetically Divorced. Today we have a very special guest that will be joining us today as he shares some different insights on divorce and just how he's been able to overcome many challenges in his life. This is Unapologetically Divorced. This is not where we just talk about relationships here. We talk about releasing the weight of everything in your life that has been holding you back. And without further ado, we have Dr. Josias joining us today. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Amazing, amazing. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? And what do you
Yes,
do?
I'm Dr. Josias Jean Pierre. I am an author, a speaker, execution coach. Vision and goals to empower others so they can be equipped to elevate fully into whom God created them to do no limits. I'm an advocate, youth coach, and a self development coach.
All right. That's a lot. That is a lot. What do you find yourself focusing on the most?
All of it the most, it all goes into one because the work that I do combines all in one. So through speaking, I do empowerment, through self development, and youth focusing. That's my audience.
Oh man, that's amazing. And as you know, this podcast is titled Unapologetically Divorced. And as we always tell people, it's not just divorce and the actual divorce, but it's about releasing everything in your life that has been holding you back. And so when you think about yourself and the people that you work with, what is it that captures your heart the most?
What captures my heart the most, people I work with, and I think about it, is really their purpose. I always say, if you don't know why you're here, you have to find out why you're here. And a lot of people don't understand their purpose in this world. And especially at times like this, depression's on the rise, anxiety's on the rise, and the question around purpose could be a question to be on the table. And so I have a big heart in helping people identify their purpose, turning their pain into purpose.
Yes. And I'm glad that you said that, turning your pain into purpose. And a lot of times, as a mental health therapist, that's what people come to me for, right? They've gone through a
Mm.
traumatic event or a series of traumatic events, and they want me to help them figure it out. What do I do next? How do I overcome this? Because to be honest, out of all the things that people go through, divorce is one of those things that people just cannot see the light. They cannot. They feel like it is the end of the world. And so I know for yourself, you have personally gone through challenges, having to go through a divorce, as well as myself. What would you say was the hardest part in going through that?
The hardest part is seeing the vows that you took going fading away. Nobody doesn't get a marriage and say I want a divorce, but the vows that I took, so that there was part, I took that serious. So to see it go away, it was like, okay.
Hmm. That's good because of the fact that so many times, and I feel like women, we do this more, but we have this whole vision of what it looks like, right? It's like, the princess and the frog, and looking at all the different Disney movies. And it's like, once you get married, you're thinking that it's going to be like that. I was just talking to a friend not long ago, and I was sharing with him, like, wow, you don't realize what takes place here. You go through all these different cycles. And so, I mean, it does happen to men too, because one thing he was saying to me was like, I never thought I would be here. And nobody does. No one gets married to find that it ends in divorce. And so you are right about that. It is hard when you see the everything just fading away. But how do you keep pushing forward when you see that this is becoming a cycle? And how do you tell yourself that it's time to get off that cycle? Because I think that's the hardest part. When you say we see it fading away, a lot of time we're in illusion mode. We're like, or delusion. And we're like, oh, you know, it ain't. I
Yeah.
know the potential. I know this person. This is not who I marry. I know this person wants to do all these things. At least we think they do, until you realize, like, no, that's not the reality.
Yeah, good question. I would say is this thing's called compromise that I think that we the people don't really understand what that really means.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I think about compromise, if it costs your peace, it's too expensive. And there was a lot of things that was costing my peace in this marriage that I was trying to hold on to, hoping there was better, but was only killing me in the inside. And I don't think that any marriage should cost you your peace because you are the foundation starts with you. And if you're not healthy in your own foundation that starts with you, it's gonna impact everybody else around you. And for me, I overlooked what shuts me off just for the sake of the marriage. I overlooked it and I was hoping that there would be a change. Now, watch, these are things that I saw in the dating phase that I still pursued,
Ooh.
hoping there will be a change. So the behavior was firm, fair, and consistent. But I was hoping there would be a change in the marriage. And I realized that until I was married, that anyone could say I want to quit doing X, Y, and Z until they have to be held accountable to it. That's when it will show up how serious they really are. And I found myself trying to pursue something, trying to pursue a marriage that was showing me what I can't really handle. And I will say this: I'm thankful for the marriage. I'm thankful for the divorce because it showed me what I can't really handle when it
Right.
comes to boundaries, when it comes to your peace, when it comes to the sanity of your being. Because as men, I can't speak for all men, but for me, it's more like if I tell you what shuts me off, I tell you what irritates me, I tell you, and you keep on doing it over and over and over again, at some point, my silence will be supposed to speak volume for itself. At some point, I'll become distant, and you have to ask questions, what's going on? And at that point, it's really too late, because I've been telling you over and over again how you're not showing up. I've been telling you over and over again how you are holding me back. And what I did really, to be honest with you, Brittany, I went to therapy because I thought I was crazy. And because the reality is, it's easy to say, hey, the divorce is here, but what happens next after the divorce? And I had to take
Right.
time for myself. I had to take time for myself to process this divorce because I'm like, what did I overlook that I did not pay attention to in the dating phase? And with my ex-wife and I, we didn't live together in dating phase. I refused. And this is why. Because marriage comes with always surprises. And two becomes one. The two becomes
Mm,
one comes with work.
that's right.
So I was like, if I believe this person is my person, I'm willing to wait till we live together. Because if we ain't married, you ain't coming. We ain't living together. That was my big old. I wasn't compromising that. But it's not until you live together till you actually see stuff that you didn't see in the dating phase, and that's where the work begins. And for me, if I actually knew what compromise actually meant, I think it would have been different.
Mm, those are good points. But I mean, that is a way that it's supposed to be, right? Is to not live together before marriage. But it's really big on taking the time to get to know each other, the ins and out, asking those key pivotal questions, and people being honest with each other. And I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of times people are not being honest with themselves on what they're looking for, what they really truly desire. I mean, how many people are going to tell you straight up front, I'm selfish? No, very few people are going to say that. And so it's really about taking the time to really get to know each other. But then also, do we know what a healthy marriage and relationship looks like? A lot of times within different ethnicities, a lot of times we don't know what that looks like. We've never seen it. And we're trying to create something that we've never seen. And I tell people all the time a marriage can work, but it takes people having to work together. And so, what advice would you give to someone that's trying to figure out, like, man, I'm seeing these flags, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. but I really want to be married. I believe they can change. I'm willing to do the
Mm,
therapy, but I
mm.
don't really see the change. Mm,
This is what I would say is do not be so in love with the idea of marriage, but
mm,
be in love with the art of marriage. Marriage is an art. And
mm.
with that art, it can't be done with anybody and everybody. And a
It
lot of
sure can.
people love the idea of it, but not everybody is willing to handle the art of marriage. And I would say what I learned is this, that in a dating phase, have the conversations of, hey, if you're thinking I want to go ahead and lead this the next level of marriage, have that phase of conversations and talk about, hey, what does it look like for you in your own household? Well, how was marriage portrayed in your own household? Like what are your stigmas you have about manhood and womanhood? Because to be honest, I was in a marriage where it was happy wife, happy life. And my facade, my motto is happy spouse, happy house. So everything was going one way, one way, one way. And so having those conversations about how did your parents modify marriage for you? What was something you looked at that you like and that you didn't like, or having those real talks before you tying the knot, because I think that will give a big idea or a grasp of what you're about to walk into. And then from there on, I will say premarital counseling. Man, that's the part
Yeah.
we miss, was premarital counseling, because the time when we had issues in our marriage and going to therapy from there, I feel like that was already too late in the process.
Right.
And the
Because you've
reason
already
why
made up your
it's
mind.
right. I remember my mind. And the reason why that is because if I knew in premarital counseling how the fact that what comes with marriage and what comes with the unity of marriage, and have things exposed in premarital counseling and go through that process, it will give us a better, clear foundation of marriage. And we could tweak things out. But when it's happening during the marriage and I'm already checked out, I think it's already too late.
Yeah. And it all starts with your mindset. Once your mind is made up, man, the mind is so powerful. And I feel like people don't really understand that. Looks like I use the analogy all the time. If someone's telling you the sky is blue, we know, okay, it is blue. But if someone comes to you and they're like, oh man, the sky is green and it's purple and it's, all these different colors and the clouds now they are brown, you're like, no, the clouds are white. But because they've already made up their mind
Hmm.
that that is what it is, they don't care what else you're telling them. And so the mind is just so powerful.
Right.
Once we have already made a decision, just like when we're trying to tell people, like, hey, that narrative did not happen like that. And they could be right there and they're telling you, this happened. And you're like, no, it didn't. Like, okay, now that's what you got from it. Now I'm telling you what actually happened. A lot of times people won't even take into consideration what you just said. They'll still keep saying the narrative the way that they said it because the mind is so powerful and they have to choose to believe something different. And so that goes back to having a closed mind versus a growth mindset. And it really depends on what type of person that you're dealing with. If they have a growth mindset, they're going to be open to explore, okay, and look at themselves and say, okay, you know what? I take full accountability for my actions. I know what I did. I know the role that I played. And that is commendable for you to say, hey, we did not go to premarital counseling. So for anyone listening today, obviously, go to counseling ahead of time. ahead of time. But one thing you mentioned about the roles, I think that's important. But I also think it's important to sit down and realize, okay, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And having that conversation up front. Because if running a household, if you find that, yeah, your dad always took the trash out and yeah, your mom always cooked, but it might be different for you too. One person might say, hey, the woman might say, okay, I don't mind taking the trash out because you do all the cooking, or I don't mind washing the dishes because you do the cooking. But really, a marriage is about a partnership. And so, how would you say your views have changed now that you've gone through a divorce and you're not that person that you used to be? Because, like you said, you're grateful for the marriage and you're grateful for the divorce.
Yeah, my views of marriage has been the same. As I don't think it's gonna change. My views of marriage, but my take on it is gonna be different. Which means is we're gonna have conversations about marriage, and we're going to talk about premarital counseling, going to premarital counseling. We're going to talk about upbringing and how did I look like for your upbringing, and we're going to talk about, there's this thing that says, what did I say versus what did you hear me say?
Right.
Talk about
Different.
triggers, impacts like that, and gaps. So my view now is next time, when I do get married, is really having those tough conversations and real conversations to the surface of things. So one, there won't be no surprising when things do arise. Things will always happen. But when I say it won't be no surprise when things arise, is we could attack the stuff that we could find. Okay, this might be a gap. Let's learn how to close this gap. And
Mhm.
yeah,
That's really good. Being able to really ask those deeper questions. 'Cause now that you've gone through it, now you have a deeper level of expertise and knowledge that you're like, look, I'm not going to, that's just not something to play with. Like you said, art cannot be done with anybody. And so, with your stories and your books that you have written, pain and purpose, and just so many different things. How do you help people now? Like, is your message different when you speak as you are speaking about your different books that you have authored?
message is still the same. The message is still the same. Hasn't changed. The foundation of my message is still the same. Hasn't changed at all. It still talks about purpose, turning pain into purpose. Talks about really using your setbacks and how can you lead to a bounce back. I always say that life struggles are like seasons in food.
Mm.
Uh, but depending on the seasons of you put in the food will determine how good your food tastes. And I think of it's the same with life struggles. Depending on how you respond to the life issues will determine the seasons that you add into your life issues, which will determine your bounce back or your staying on the setback.
Right. And that's something I tell my clients all the time. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it and how we allow it to affect us.
Hmm.
And it's just so many different levels to it. And the thing is, we cannot allow the things that have happened to us to define us. And that's what's beauty. We got to move on. There's some people you meet them and they're still stuck. They're stuck
Yeah.
mentally with what happened 10, 20 years ago. And it's like, come on, it's time to wake up. It's time to move forward. It's time to dream big and do something different. But a lot of times that comes by the circle that you have around you. And so when you think about having that circle around you, what type of circle would you say you have? Has that helped you to be the man that you are today?
Yeah. My circle that I have around me are people who really hold me accountable. Like I tell them how I want to show up for me, and I
Mm,
tell them what I need them to do to show up for me, and how that looks like. So I have a circle of people who always give me real conversations. They don't care about how I feel, and that's good because I don't want them to care about how I feel. I want them to give me real conversations and heart to heart conversations. And my circle will put me in check if I need it,
yeah,
because I give them the access to, and I give them the license to. And so when they do it, I cannot get mad because I told them to show up for me that way. And
that's
even when
great.
it came to the part of our the marriage and before getting divorced, I talked to my married folks, the married men. And the reason why I do that is because you don't want to talk to your single folks about your marriage issue because they're not married. That's a different type of circle, different type of environment. Talk to your married people, your married people, the men that you trust, woman you trust in your life when it comes to it, because that's a different type of mindset when it comes to marriage. And then when it came to the marriage itself, I wasn't talking to anybody who was married for 5 to 6 years. I was talking to people who've been married for 30 to 40 years.
Right.
So, and because I'm gonna trust your wisdom because y'all went through the dirt, the mud, and all the ugly, but and beautiful.
That's
So
right.
now here I am hanging by a thread and trying to figure out what can I do. And I realized that everybody who I have talked to, the men who've been married for that long in marriage, has told me, "Hey, Josias, I see yourself not taking care of you." Like they saw me in my lowest moment, and they were like, if this marriage is causing you too much distress, God does not want to put you in a will not put you in a marriage that will kill your peace. And
Mm,
if it's causing that much distress to you, I will say you gotta let it go.
that's right. And sometimes that's all we need, right? All we need is a word, and it's like the simplest words that we need. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the one sentence prayer, the one word prayer. You're like, that's all I need. That's all I need. You know, I remember one of my friends telling me, when are you gonna choose yourself? When are you going to choose yourself? And it gets to a point where we get so used of the drama and the trauma, right? It
Yeah.
becomes our narrative, and people get tired of hearing that, right? But when you're willing to listen and you're done and you're tired, that's when all you need is just that little bit. That's all I needed to say. You know what? When am I going to start choosing myself? You know, here I
Mm-hmm.
am. I'm definitely not taking care of myself. I'm taking care of everybody else, doing all the things, but taking care of me. And so, as we come to a close, what would you like to leave our listeners with today? Like, do you have a favorite quote, a favorite scripture? And how can our listeners connect with you?
What I'll leave for everybody or anybody who is going through a divorce, think about going through a divorce, or anybody who has been divorced, is this: even if you are divorced, you are not an accident. Um, and don't be in love with the idea of marriage, but be in love with the art of marriage. So if you do choose to go invest back into the dating world and hopes of getting married, have the mindset of, can I have an art of marriage with this individual? And I'm not talking about sexual pleasures. I'm talking about the actual art of marriage, where the foundation could still be pushing through, even if the foundation is not is steady, because that will be the thing that will hold us in difficult times in the marriage. And second thing I would say is this: is don't forget who you are in the process. And a lot of times we could forget who we are. Depression will hit in a high level, but if you just look at the word depression and you change it around, the word you have is I pressed on. So
Right.
therefore, keep pressing on after the fact. And how to find me? I'm on Instagram, coach with underscore Josias. So COACHWITH underscore Josias.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm so glad that you ended with that because people need to understand and it's so much more than sex. You know, after sex, then what? Like you got to be able to connect and you got to know this is your person to weather the storm through the ups and the downs of life.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just so excited to have you on our episode today, and we will definitely make sure that we have you on for some more things because we have to dig in a little bit deeper to the pain and making it your purpose and just really living on because so many people believe that what happened to them, that is their story. And it's like, no, it's a part of your story. It's a chapter in your book, but that
Mm-hmm.
is not all that you have to offer.
Yep.
So thank you for being a special guest on
You're welcome.
Unapologetically Divorced.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Stella, baby. Finna get right. Here we go.